All right, today we're going to tackle the simple present. It's probably one of the very first tenses you ever learned in English, but let's be honest, it's got a few tricky corners that can trip up just about anyone. But don't worry, in the next few minutes, we're going to make it all crystal clear.
So why is it so confusing? I mean, it's called simple, right? Well, it looks easy, but there's this one tiny rule, and we're talking about a single letter here that makes all the difference. Let's get to the bottom of it.
Okay, first things first, we've got to build a solid foundation. And to really get a handle on the simple present, we're going to start with its two biggest jobs, talking about habits and facts.
So, at its very core, you can think of the simple present as the tense of stability. It's for all the things that happen regularly, or for facts that are just, well, always true. It's basically the grammar you use for everything that doesn't change from day to day.
And what's kind of cool is how this one single tense can cover everything from your own little world to the fundamental laws of the universe. I mean, think about it. I wake up at 7. That's your personal routine. The sun rises in the east. That's a universal fact. But they both use the simple present. Why? Because they're describing consistent, predictable actions.
Okay, now for the main event. This is it, the single biggest point of confusion for pretty much every English learner out there. When in the world do you add that little s to the end of the verb?
All right, here it is. The golden rule. The one thing you absolutely positively have to remember. For those three little pronouns, he, she, and it, you add an s or es to the verb. That's it. For all the others, you don't. It's that specific. And if you've ever wondered why, it's actually a super interesting leftover from Old English. Back then, verbs changed for almost every pronoun. So this little s is kind of like the last fossil of that ancient system. Pretty cool, huh? Let's see this rule in action. It's super clear when you look at it side by side. I eat, no s. But the moment we switch to talking about someone else, he eats, bam, the verb changes. It's such a tiny little modification, but it's absolutely crucial for sounding natural and getting your grammar right. So you can really just think of it as two groups, super simple. You've got I, you, we, they on one team, and for them you just use the basic verb, no changes, like play. Then you've got he, she, it on the other team, and for them the verb gets that s, so play becomes plays. Awesome, now that you've got that s rule down, we can start expanding our toolkit. Let's see how this whole thing works when we want to make negative sentences or ask questions.
So, making a sentence negative is actually a really straightforward two-step process. First, you bring in a little helper verb, either do not or does not, and then you just add the original verb right after it, but, and this is key, in its basic form. No s on the main verb this time.
Check this out. See how the s rule is still in play? But it's moved. It's not on the main verb anymore. It's on the helper verb. So I gets do not, but she gets does not. And in both of these sentences, the main verb like just stays simple, no s.
And you know what? Asking a question follows almost the exact same logic. It's even simpler, really. All you have to do is take that helper verb, do or does, and pop it right at the beginning of the sentence.
Okay, listen up, because this is probably the #1 mistake people make. Once you use does, it has already done the job of adding the s. You can kind of think of it like this. The s can only be used once in that part of the sentence. So the main verb that comes after has to go back to its original, simple form.
Right, so once you really get this, a sentence like does he lives just starts to sound, well, wrong to your ear. The s is already on does, so the verb has to be live. The correct way is just does he live. Simple as that.
All right, you're doing great. You've pretty much mastered the rules for habits, facts, negative sentences, and questions. So now let's get into something really interesting, a kind of hidden power of the simple present that actually lets you talk about the future.
I know. It sounds like a trick question, right? How can a tense that literally has the word present in its name be used to talk about stuff that hasn't even happened yet? Well, let's find out. And the answer is a definite yes. But there's a catch. It's only in this one very specific situation, when you're talking about fixed official schedules. Think timetables for trains, planes, or even your class schedule.
So even though the train's departure is technically in the future because it's on a fixed, unchangeable schedule, we say the train leaves at 6 p.m. Same logic applies to your classes. My class starts at 9. It's a really cool little trick that'll make your English sound so much more natural.
Okay, let's pull all this together and consolidate everything we've just covered into your own personal simple present toolkit. This is going to help you use this tense with total confidence. So here it is, your mental checklist. Use the simple present for habits and routines? Check. For general facts? Check. Always remember that big S rule for he, she, and it. And don't forget its special superpower for talking about fixed future schedules and timetables.
You know, if there's just one thing you take away from all this today, let it be this. That one little S rule, that's the biggest hurdle. Once you get that burned into your muscle memory, I promise, the rest of the tense just clicks into place. It really does become, well, simple.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. The simple present is the tense we use for our routines, our habits. It's the language that describes who we are on a day-to-day basis. Now that you've totally mastered the rules, take a second to think about it. What story does your simple present tell about you? Thanks for tuning in.